Oi oi, hello and welcome everyone to the Earth Spike build. This is how it looks like, and it's this little funny ability here. And it's got a 15% stun chance, and you deal, when you hit a stunned or immobilized enemy, you summon a second Earth Spike, which basically means double the damage. So normally you just summon a little rock underneath your enemies, but thanks to the legendary aspect, you summon an entire wave, and in Season 5, there it is. And in Season 5 the aspect was changed, so it no longer has a cooldown, means you can spam it, and it scales with your attack speed. In order to play the build, you need a couple of items. And one of them, in my opinion, is Andariel's, because it gives us a massive boost to our first attack speed bucket, also life on hit, which is really useful, keeps us alive a lot, and we also have a chance to proc poison on the enemies. We also use a legendary chest piece to fix life and armor, get a chance to immobilize enemies so we can hit them twice, and a little bit of damage reduction from the aspect. In my build, it's very important to have a good Fist of Fate, because you get a massive lucky hit bonus, pants with +4 to Earth Spike, a little bit of life and armor fixing, extra stun chance, and +2 to Earth skills once we have a certain amount of Fortify. It's just a little bit of Fortify is enough, actually. Boots with a legendary aspect to deal extra damage against daze and some daze chance. It's really good against bosses, some movement speed, extra stun chance, and armor. Now, as a weapon, I'm using SOV, because it gives us a ton of damage, second bucket attack speed, a bonus to basic abilities, so it's perfect for this build. But our basic attacks also drain resource, and in order to offset that, we use the Ring of Starless Skies, which gives us a massive damage boost, also a nice, I think, first bucket attack speed and lucky hit chance, and it reduces resource cost to a level I can show you actually. So I use it a few times, and it costs 13, and we generate 16 when we use it, and normally it costs 25, so we can spam it. And on the amulet I have +3 to Envenom and Crushing Earth, which gives us a ton of multiplicative damage to crowd controlled, and reduce Petrify cooldown, because we use Petrify as our ultimate. And I have Moonrise aspect on it. On the ring I use the adaptability aspect, life willpower, and that's very important for the build, a lucky hit proc to make enemies vulnerable, also crit damage and Petrify cooldown reduction. On the totem I also run life and willpower, unfortunately a little bit of extra damage and nothing else. I wish I had a better roll there. But also crowd control damage and double Earth Spike cast chance, which is really important to deal extra damage, and of course the Earth Spike legendary aspect. In case you don't have the sword and the ring, just pick a two-hander. That's what I did. And instead of the ring, you grab a legendary ring with almost the same like this one, except the lucky hit proc you will use crit damage. Okay, now let's have a look at our skill tree. So we put all our points into Earth Spike, grab the first upgrade for the stun chance and the double hit chance, of course. Then I grab Earthen Bulwark, gives us a little bit more survivability, and we can break crowd control, that's very important. And a little bit of Fortify, why not? 1 point into Cyclone armor, so we get elemental damage reduction, and we pick Blood Howl and this upgrade, so we get second bucket attack speed. These two passives for extra damage reduction, this passive for extra multiplicative damage against crowd controlled and distant enemies. This one is on +6 thanks to my amulet, which gives us a ton of extra damage. 1 point in Safeguard is enough to get enough Fortify from all our critical hits, and extra damage when I'm fortified. 1 point in Trample, so we can break crowd control and can reposition ourselves. 1 point in this because we need it, and it reduces enemy movement speed by a bit, and 6 in Venom because of the amulet, which is 60% extra damage against poisoned enemies. And thanks to Andariels, we poison enemies all the time. So we have Petrify, fully upgraded. So when we hit a boss, we reduce its cooldown by 10, and it gives us 50% crit multiplier against bosses for almost 9 seconds. Then we have 3 points in this, so our Fortify is a little bit stronger. This for extra damage. This for extra earth damage against vulnerable enemies. That's why the ring is so important. And here's some extra damage. Also this, because when we shapeshift, we get a stacking damage multiplier. And this, when we shape into a wolf, which we will do all the time, we get some movement speed. And when we shape into a bear, which we do with trample, we get some damage reduction. Now, our key notable here is Earthen Might. It gives us a small chance to grant ourselves a buff, and this buff gives us 100% crit chance for 5 seconds. So when you attack something, then you can see it, you have this green shimmer around you, and that's the buff. And it procs all the time, actually. So we almost all the time we have 100% crit chance. And thanks to the Fists of Fate, our lucky hit chance is super high, which boosts my Earth Spike to 94%. With a potion, I can even get to 99%. And remember, Fist of Fate is not fully upgraded. There are still 4 levels missing, so this one could go even higher. So yeah, in a few casts, you basically have the buff, and then you have 100% crit chance, which means you don't have to focus on crit chance, but rather crit damage. That's why I have crit damage on so many of my pieces. Anyways, let's have a look at our Paragon board. So we start out at the bottom, we pick these nodes for life and damage, these for some extra life. And as a first glyph I have human, because I mostly stay in human form on this build, and it gives us damage reduction and a little bit of additive damage. First additional board we pick is Earth and Devastation, because it gives us multiplicative damage bonus that scales with crowd control damage. It's not at 60% but just 55%. That's because my items are not fully upgraded, but once I did, I'll probably reach 60. And a little bit of extra damage here, some resists and extra crit damage here. And as a glyph I use Earth and Sky, which boosts the resists and the extra crit damage here, and gives us 10% more damage against either crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies. And this board was Tendrils, and here I picked Tectonic to get more lucky hit chance, which we need to get our crit chance up all the time, and more earth critical damage, which is good because we crit all the time. A little bit of extra life here, some damage here, and additional life down here. Next board is the Storm board, Thunderstruck. We get life nodes here and here, and we use Outmatch for extra physical damage, and it also boosts our rare node here that gives us damage reduction against vulnerable enemies, and we make them vulnerable all the time. Now here I picked this passive, and it's the Heightened Malice. When 3 or more enemies are poisoned, then I get a massive bonus to damage, which is really good for clearing out enemies. Some additional life here, damage against poisoned here, also here, and damage reduction from poisoned. And since we have Andariels and we poison everything, these nodes work quite well. Also Spirit Glyph for extra crit damage. And since we crit all the time, this is perfect. And the last few points I dumped into Ancestral Guidance. And yeah, after we spend 75 spirit, we deal 30% multiplicative bonus damage for 5 seconds. As you can see, I have already accumulated 26, and it basically looks like that. If you watch this buff down here, it goes up so quickly, it's up all the time. And last but not least, let's have a look at the spirit boons. So I usually use damage reduction from melees. If you push easier content and you need to be fast, then use movement speed instead. For example, when it comes to leveling glyphs in Nightmare Dungeons. I no longer need attack speed because my first bucket attack speed is capped out. So I pick life instead, and crit damage. Of course, we don't need crit chance because we have 100% up all the time. A little bit of ulti duration here, and reduce cooldown of ultimate abilities by 2 seconds. 10% chance, we almost have 100% chance here, so that's basically almost a 10% chance to proc all the time. So our Petrify will be up on like every elite pack and on bosses. There's one problem that can happen with the build if you're not careful enough, and it looks like this. You're basically and then what? You can't do anything anymore because your ability costs energy. So what you can do is you use Petrify, which gives you 50 spirit, and then you can continue. Or the other and less elegant option is you have a sword in your inventory, or another weapon if you want, and you mark it so you can't sell it, and then you quickly equip this weapon, and then your spell doesn't cost any energy. Then you can fill up your energy pool and then re-equip it, hopefully without dying. So the strength of this build is that you basically have a projectile that travels and it pierces everything on its path. If your enemies are positioned correctly, then you can deal a lot of damage and have decent clear speed with it, and that's especially the case in nightmare dungeons and in pit runs. And that makes it pretty cool for pushing those. However, you don't really have a good 360 AoE damage on this build, and that makes it quite poor in arenas actually. So I can do tier 6 arenas easily, and I can also do tier 7 ones, but they take a lot of time and you don't get a lot of ether out of them because your clear speed is simply too low because you have no real 360 AoE. You only have this narrow projectile, and it takes just ages to like shoot it around you in a circle and kill everything. So this build is better suited to do pit runs than the arenas right now. The ability itself is pretty cool in my opinion. It's almost like a Heart Seeker, but without the victimized proc. So it lacks a little bit of extra oomph, and I hope that Blizzard could add something to the ability in the future to make it really competitive to all the other builds out there. Because at the moment it's not quite perfect, but it's pretty good. It has exceeded my expectations actually, and I'm having a ton of fun with the build right now. So if you want, give it a try. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving me a like or a sub, and well, have a nice day. Bye bye.